FOS TV is brought to you by the Lion's Den. The Den always has been and always will be about enjoying family and friends in an environment steeped in Happy Valley tradition. So come back to the Den, the perfect place to recall old memories while creating new ones.
We only have 12 games this year, so every game for us is a very, very vital football game. I mean, we're playing in front of 100,000 people here at Penn State. I would assume that our players will come out with a lot of intensity, and they can't. We only got 2 more months to play about. I mean, so I'm glad that it's their Super Bowl, but I'm just telling you, this is a big game for us, just like every single game this year is a big game for us, because on November whatever, the season's over. So this is a big game.
Mark Brennan of Fight on State here with our weekly Bill O'Brien press conference wrap, joined as usual by Greg Pickle. I said wrapped because maybe we were wrapped by what he had to say. Mostly wrapping up the Navy game, looking ahead to Temple. Let's get right off with an injury report. What were some of the things he had to say? Because a lot of people are a little nervous about how banged up Penn State is.
Yeah, he was sort of guarded initially when he talked about Belton and Day. I believe that was you that asked that question, and he said that the backfield looks fine. It was a very terse, short answer. And then later on, he did elaborate more and said Day was ahead of Belton just a little bit, potentially, in terms of their recovery. And he also said Donovan Smith, if he comes out gimpy today, he's not sure if he'll play Saturday. So that's where they're at in terms of those guys. And then, of course, you have Naeem Mortman as well, who O'Brien said we probably won't see for a while. So in terms of his injury, it seems like that knee is not healing very well. But that was pretty much it. He didn't touch on Pete Mazzaro at all, who was ruled out this week in the game notes and the injury report. So that was pretty much it. Belton's and Day.
The other key guy obviously is Donovan Smith, who he said we're again. I always like to clarify that we're taping this on Tuesday, recording it on Tuesday because a lot of people watch it later in the week. But he said if Donovan Smith is able to practice today, Tuesday, that he should be good for the game, but he's not sure. And you know, he kind of joked. He said, "I know you guys are getting sick of me saying everybody's day to day, but that's really what's up." So, not sure what's going to happen with Donovan Smith, the tackle. But we should know Wednesday, whenever you're watching this, practice will be open, so we'll have a pretty good feel for that. But I'd like to go back to one of the things you were talking about, Greg. He was happy. He said he's very happy with their running game. By the same token, he was also asked about the fact that they have not scored a rushing touchdown this year, and that's very odd for Penn State. And that's something as the season goes along, in the Big Ten. I know they're scoring some points now. I know they finally got the offense going against Navy, a little bit against Virginia, but they're clearly going to have to start running the ball a little bit better. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think Matt Stankiewicz in the player portion of today's session kind of summed up what O'Brien said, is that touchdowns are touchdowns. We're going to get them any way we can get them, and we want them any way we can get them. But you're absolutely right. Eventually, teams are just going to start stacking up to play the pass against Penn State. And I think you see that's where Donovan Smith comes in. When he's in there, Penn State's offensive line just seems to run block a lot better than they do when he's not in there. And that's not to say Mike Farrell and Adam Gress are not good enough to play, but it's definitely, you see the difference. So that's something they're going to have to focus on. And O'Brien said that they may focus on a little more. And I think you might see more of Curtis Duke, especially once they get down deep, 10, 5-yard line. Curtis Dukes, Mike Zordich, just try and get something going downhill and run into the end zone.
Yeah, speaking of the red zone, Bill O'Brien had a kind of back and forth discussion, almost like a little fireside chat with Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror. I was hassling Neil because he pressed him on the situation where they decided to not go for a field goal that would have given them a 23 to. It would have given them a 23-0 lead, and instead tried to go for a fourth and what was it? Fourth and eight touchdown. And Bill O'Brien stands by the fact that he thought they had a really good call, that Navy just got a good pass rush. I'm not sure. Still looking at that, I'm skeptical. I'm not skeptical that he thought he had a good call, but I really don't think that was the right thing to do. Number one, I don't think it helped with Ficken's confidence. The kicker, who's been struggling, obviously missed an extra point. And number two, at that point of the game, you want to make it more than a 3-touchdown game, and they just didn't do that. But he was standing firm by his decision.
Yeah, it was very interesting because he said later on that the reason Stephen Bench didn't play, which we're going to talk about, is that he felt like it was still a ball game. But if it's a ball game when you're up 20-0, you get the points. and they didn't do that. Now, he says he felt he had a good play call. He said that after the game. He's very adamant that he believes that, and I'm sure he did. And I'm sure he does believe that if the pass protection's better, he gets it. And he also said that even if Ficken makes the extra point after the third touchdown, that they go for it on fourth down there. I'm not so sure if I buy that. And I really think that you're absolutely right, that, and a lot of you have talked about it as well, that that's probably a good spot to get him some confidence, and they instead go for it, don't end up getting it. It doesn't end up costing them, but it could cost them down the road when Ficken has to come out and kick, and he doesn't have that extra little bit of confidence he could have gained.
Yeah, he was asked specifically about Ficken, and had he made the extra point, as you mentioned, would he have gone for the field goal? And this is one of these things with coaches, and I really have enjoyed the candor from Bill O'Brien, but there's also gamesmanship, and he knows that he's talking to the media, and he has to spin things certain ways. He maintains that he's still confident in Ficken, that Ficken is their guy going forward. But I have to believe that they're in the back of their heads that they are nervous about this kid. He talked about Ficken making 10 of 10 field goals in full team situations. He made 5 of 5 when we were there last week. But there's a whole different feel between being over there at the practice fields near Lash Building and being out here at Beaver Stadium. And I got to tell you, will it come into play this week? I don't know, but they're going to need him to pick up his game as the season goes along.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's no question about it. And I think Bill O'Brien knows that. I think John Butler and the other special teams coordinators know that. I think Sam Ficken knows that. And whatever it is, whether it's confidence, whether it's technique, Bill O'Brien keeps hammering on this idea of technique. And I mean, it makes sense considering he's been consistently off to the left, off to the right. It's not just pull it, push it. He's consistently, wherever he's lined up, it's going the opposite direction. So I think that if he can get that figured out, great. But we heard Bill O'Brien say last week that it was technique, and after the game say it was technique. And how long can you say it's technique before you decide to go a different direction? I think that's what he's looking at right now if Sam Ficken again struggles on Saturday.
Yeah, a little bit more time spent this week looking ahead to the next opponent, and Bill O'Brien specifically talked a lot about Steve Adazio. Was it news to you? It was kind of news to me when he said they were almost on the same Notre Dame staff for a while, and had obviously, what was the coach's name there? The guy down at South Florida or whatever. I'm trying to blank on his name, but anyway, I didn't know. Did we know that before?
Not particularly. He did mention that on the Big East Coaches Conference call yesterday, so I had that bit of a head up. But otherwise, no, I have not been aware of that was a potential thing. And as Steve Adazio said it yesterday, Bill O'Brien said it today, they've known each other for a long time because they're a part of that Northeast coaches circle. It's not that they know each other very well, but there's definitely that respect there. And Steve Adazio said yesterday that Bill O'Brien approaches the game the same way he does, that hard, have an edge, tough, physical style of football. And I think that's where a lot of that respect comes from.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien was asked about the Temple's long losing streak, and he was like, "You had to bring that up." I think it was Ron Musselman who asked that, and he said he doesn't care about losing streaks. Right. He doesn't know how good Temple was in 1940 or whenever it was the last time that they beat Penn State, but he talked about how good this Temple team is, and they clearly have gotten significantly better over the last however many years. First with Al Golden, now with Adazio. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to maintain that now that Adazio is getting on, and it's not just Golden's guys that he was playing with. And we'll get a pretty good feel. I mean, they came out, beat Villanova, it was handily, and then were smoked by Maryland, which was a very tough game for them. Anxious to see what Temple brings, and I think Penn State's almost a double-figure favorite here, so it would lead you to believe that the odds makers think the Lions have a pretty good shot.
Yeah, they opened up at 9 and stayed pretty consistent, and the thing with Temple is they run. They don't pass a whole lot. They like to run the football. And you would think that plays into Penn State's defense's hands, especially with the lack of depth in the secondary, as we all know of. So if Temple can't get a ground game going, their offensive line's pretty banged up. If they have trouble getting the ground game going, I think that's where you can really see Penn State taking advantage of this Temple team and start to make things happen, start to get good field position, and put points on the board. But then again, we go back to the idea of Sam Ficken. If Penn State scores and Ficken kicks it to the 40-yard line, well, then your field position's washed out. So there's a lot of keys to go into this, but I think if you stop the run with Temple, you stop a lot of what they try to do offensively.
Yeah, in Ficken's defense, I thought he did a pretty good job on kickoffs in the last game, and if he could maintain that, that's part of getting past it. And you have to imagine we're right here in front of where the student section usually is. I hope that I actually thought that was pretty cool last week when they were kind of cheering when he was making things. I didn't think that was mean-spirited in the pregame warm-ups, and hopefully they stay behind him. Another thing that jumped out to me from Bill O'Brien today, he was asked about Penn State's lack of turnovers, and even before the question was finished, he was knocking on wood, he was knocking on his head, and that's really been a lack of offensive turnovers by Penn State has been huge, and if they can maintain that at least gives them a shot in a lot of these games.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about it, Matt McGloin hasn't made a whole lot of questionable decisions. You can think back to a couple where he's
knocking on the
right, exactly, knocking on wood there again. He hasn't thrown a lot of balls in the areas he shouldn't have. He hasn't tried to make too much out of plays and tried to run and then fumble. He's done a pretty good job and been consistent with the idea of taking a play for what it's worth and getting rid of a play if it's not worth anything. And that's what he has to do going forward. Fumble-wise, we only get to see a little bit out of Belton, so we're not sure if that fumble issue is cleared up. But between Zordich and Zwinnick and Dukes, they all carry the ball pretty strongly, so you wouldn't expect to see a whole lot of immediate fumbles there. It's just an idea of when you have all these things working against you, the things you can control, you have to. And turnovers are one of the things that they have controlled both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, with respect to McGloin, clearly that's been the biggest difference with him this year. He's not always been great on deep passes, but he's made very good decisions. And if he can keep that up again, I think it's just another one of those positive signs. This team to me got better from Ohio to Virginia and then took another step from Virginia to Navy, and it's absolutely imperative that they continue to do that, because then you head out to Illinois with an opportunity, playing with a little bit of motivation to get on a real roll. Anything else from today's press conference that jumped out at you?
No, he talked about the true freshmen and the fact that he'd like to redshirt most of those guys now that they're going to be 4 games into the season and haven't played yet. So I think that pretty much equals the end to Akil Lynch. Now, granted, he did say injuries will play a role in that, of course, but it does seem like the guys that haven't been in yet, Eugene Lewis, Akil Lynch, those guys will not be seeing the field unless injuries dictate the need to. But otherwise, not much stands out. Pretty run-of-the-mill press conference, like you said. He's just really driving home the day-to-day stuff, and whether that's as accurate as it could be, probably not. But again, it's the gamesmanship that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, just to be clear, when you said it may signal the end for Akil Lynch, you mean for this season, not that he's necessarily going anywhere, although there will be speculation after the season with a lot of guys who play and don't play. But we have a long way to go before we have to worry about this or that. Right now, there's 7 or 8 or however many thousand seats in this stadium. Pickle and I are the only ones in here. How cool is this?
Very cool.
Anyway, we're going to wrap it up for this week. We will see you next week, wrapping up the Temple game, looking ahead to Illinois. Thanks for joining us here at FightOnState.com.